Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. McDonald. Welcome to PermanenteDocs Chat. So I have a little bit of a sore throat. Don't worry, I tested negative for COVID, but if I squeak, I'm not going through puberty again. It's just because my throat's a little bit sore. So thanks for your patience there. Today, I'm very excited for this conversation. We're talking with Dr. Lindsay Mazotti, who is a hospitalist and one of our KP, I'm just going to call you one of our physician education gurus. And I'm really excited for this conversation. We worked together before, and excited for her to share some of her knowledge and passion with all of you. So we're going to jump right in. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you're on Facebook, put them in the comments, and we will try to get to some of your questions as well as we talk about all things physician education. So, Dr. Mazotti, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start by just telling us who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Alex. I'm excited to be here. I'm a hospitalist in TPMG. I work in the East Bay, Oakland Medical Center. I also there serve as the Assistant Physician in Chief for Education and Development. And I serve as the Assistant Dean for Clinical Education for the new KP School of Medicine in Pasadena.
Awesome. Sounds good. So a little bit of education everywhere, the whole spectrum.
In, yeah.
So tell us, we obviously have a number of residency and fellowship programs within the entire KP system. How many education programs or residency and fellowship programs do we have? How many physicians do we train each year as an organization?
It's actually a ton. So we did the math recently and kind of looking broadly across Permanente and KP in general. We have essentially different regions have different numbers. So we've got 19 residencies and 14 fellowships in Northern California, 19 and 16 in Southern California, and 1 in Washington and 1 in the Mid-Atlantic. So a huge representation. It totals over 900 of our own residents and fellows, and then an additional 2,000 residents and fellows rotate through our medical centers nationally every year. So huge footprint, actually.
Wow, that's amazing. I guess I should give for our audience disclosure that I did my residency and fellowship here at KP as well too. So I'm a product of all of the work that you and many people have done. So I don't know if you should be proud or embarrassed. I'll leave that up to you. So now education is obviously not just residency and fellowship. We obviously have undergraduate medical education. We have continuing medical education. So KP has a huge footprint when it comes to all of those pieces in the whole continuum of education. So tell us more about the undergraduate and particularly the new Bernard Tyson Kaiser School of Medicine, and then also some of the continuing medical education work you're doing for physicians after practice and the rest of their career.
Thanks. Yeah, you mentioned it's really this continuum. Like it starts in the pipeline. So thinking about how we even bring people into medicine and reach sort of into high school, community college, and bring them forward. Our medical school is awesome. We are just starting our 3rd class, so we're going to have 3 years of students. We have about 50 students a year. The program is really innovative. It's very early clinical immersion. Just an awesome school. If you haven't gotten a chance to spend any time in the building in Pasadena, it's stunning with amazing sim lab and this kind of very modern approach to anatomy. And then, our students there are really out and they're getting all of their training in our medical center. So I think that's what's so amazing is they're basically imprinting with kind of the way that we practice medicine in KP. And then CME, you continue through residencies, fellowships. It's kind of one long path and journey where we're practicing the same skills, but really thinking differently about how we become competent doctors. And that competence has to be fostered in continuing medical education too. And so it's really important for us to be focused on what kind of products we want our learners to be, and then what we're focusing on for our physicians as well as they're in practice for 30 years.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I remember the moment, it was almost like a light bulb went off during my intern year, actually, a residency, when I realized that I would be learning for the rest of my life and the rest of my career. And for me personally, that's really exciting. Like that's the challenge, but also the thing I love best about medicine is, especially in family medicine and primary care, literally things are changing sometimes week by week, month by month, and constantly staying up with the latest information and learning and learning how to learn and relearn as you go throughout your career is really exciting and really fun and can be overwhelming at times. But I must admit that being part of KP and an organization that values that education and makes it easy to get that education is really wonderful as well too. So but I
I think
digress.
especially once you get through med school and it's not for grades anymore, and you get that kind of growth mindset of like, oh,
Mhm.
this is forever. Now how do I want to approach my learning, and what do I need? And then how
Mhm.
you become an independent learner.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Tell me about from like an organizational point of view. I mean, tell us what the value is to KP as an organization to be involved in all these different the whole continuum of education, and also what it means for our community and the patients we serve.
That's a great question. So I kind of go back to the equation that we think about for value, right? Which is benefit over cost. And when we talk about, the value of medical education, I think we're really talking about the benefit over multiple, it's kind of a spectrum. So thinking about our learning outcomes, like what is the benefit to the learners, thinking about the impact of being a teacher and an educator on faculty, right? Our doctors really thrive when they're teaching and educating. It kind of keeps things current. It's really helpful when it's stressful to see that there are people who want to do what you're doing and are so excited about medicine. And then kind of that benefit to just the greater good in the organization. So what do we have that we can teach to the learners who touch us, whether they're staying with us for several years or kind of going on in the future? What are the principles of Permanente medicine that they can take forward into the next institutions? We kind of roam around, and so if we're really thinking about, if we feel that we provide, an incredible integrated care delivery system to our patients, then what can we provide our learners so they can help propagate those principles and values forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, as a permanent day physician, I love the fact that we are really evidence based, right? We follow the science and we follow the data. And it's constantly changing and evolving. A lot of times, patients come in to see me and they've sort of done their Google search and they come in with a list of things, and we sort of sit down. I'm like, well, absolutely, we can order these 20 labs, but really, that's not good quality medicine. And I'm living in an environment that is constantly giving you information and talking about what's evidence-based, what's truly patient-centric, is so helps support me as a physician too. And I feel that I can then be a better doctor and provide better care to my patients. Sometimes order the antibiotic for a viral cold feels good, but it's not the right thing to do.
Right.
And so having an organization that really rewards and places value on that evidence basis is so important as well too. That's a little bit of a sidetrack.
Well, we're doing some cool work that I'm really excited about, where we're starting to be able to connect patient care outcomes back to our learners. So
Hmm.
instead of kind of the your doctor, preceptor, attending, thinking that you did a great job or feeling like, you were very competent, we're actually starting to be able to measure how well the quality of care provided is of the residents and the fellows,
Hmm.
and hopefully connecting that to the med students too. And then actually our medical students are getting patient satisfaction scores,
Hmm.
which I think is cool. It's something that I didn't get as a learner, and by and large, our patients are so excited to work with the med students. They're so thankful for their care. They're really quite inspired by, seeing these younger learners working with our doctors.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that front. I'm one of the, I guess I should disclose this too. I'm one of the faculty for our residency program, and I'm also one of the faculty for the KP School of Medicine, working with our first and second year residents from literally the beginning. And I've had the opportunity to literally watch this medical student grow from a first year medical student to now moving on to being a third year medical student and blossom. I got to work with her every week almost for the entire 2 years, and patients love the interactions and they love seeing her. And they when I see them sometimes without her, they're like, well, where's your medical student? I'm like, oh, sorry, you're
I
stuck
know.
with just me today.
It's like such a great compliment too, because you're not sure sometimes when you have a student how it's going to be received, and then when they're asking for them, I think that's just the best. And I heard a lot of the physicians who are finishing their second year with our medical students were grieving a little bit that they had
Mm-hmm.
to start over with a brand new student. So that's I think a testament to that longitudinal relationship that we're trying to establish with the type of clerkships that we have in our medical school. So that longitudinal training, really relationship focused with patients, but also with their preceptors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's I really enjoy that piece of it. There's no, again, a family doctor, I'm all about relationships and longitudinal care for my patients and longitudinal education for my residents, my medical students. So it fits perfectly with sort of what brings me a lot of personal satisfaction and joy too. And then I think I can be a better teacher also, right?
Yep, definitely.
So tell us about what role so both for physicians, maybe younger physicians who are just sort of starting out, and also those who've been working for a few years, what role does medical education play for them, especially kind of our early career physicians, and also in terms of recruitment to have physicians join our medical groups as well, to really ensure that they're understanding what Permanente medicine is and how they can kind of understand and buy into those educational values too.
Yeah, I think that's really part of that value equation, right? When you think about recruitment and retention, um, we're reaching into so many different places, not just to think about, our residency programs and our residency recruitment, but to think about our future workforce. So when we look at some of the data from 2019, which was actually pre-COVID, that came out from the AAMC, there are all of these workforce shortages that are um, anticipated, and they're potentially worse than we thought they were, particularly primary care, but also surgery and some other fields. So we want to be building programs that are enticing, outstanding learners, but really also uh, underrepresented in medicine, really diverse learners. We want to be geographically diverse, and think about how we're going to have, especially our primary care workforce supported. So a lot of the things that we do for medical school and for residency recruitment are playing out a little bit more on social media. I think that's been a really popular way that we've seen how we share the work that we're doing kind of more broadly with younger learners. And I think we're pivoting right now after the pandemic to think about recruitment differently too. And so sharing the work that we're doing like today and in other settings is really important. And then to retain our docs is that's critical for us, and we want people to have really long, you know, amazing careers with Permanente medicine. And so where you can sprinkle in education, I think you just like you said, right? It's joyful, and that that can feel new in a practice that's starting to feel like you're doing a lot of the same things. Um, and it can be challenging in a great way, and sometimes in a time way in terms of
Yeah.
just busyness, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I took my current job, actually, when I first started working here, I wasn't one of the core faculty, but I knew I'd be literally in the same clinic as the residents, and just having that energy and having them be around. And I knew that I wanted to teach at some point, and so that was a big part of the reason I decided to stay where I am as opposed to working in another clinic or another area. Um, Again, because it is professionally fulfilling and satisfying. And as I said before, having learners around like sort of makes you a Jedi master. Oh, shoot, they're going to ask me about the Krebs cycle. I better look it up real quickly, and things which you don't necessarily always think about on a daily basis too.
Or
So
you're teaching them how you look things up in real time. You're like, that's a great question. Let me show you how I would up to
yep.
date that question you just asked.
Exactly, exactly.
Exactly.
You kind of touched on my next question also a little bit about the workforce shortage, particularly in primary care. How is KP looking at the different residency and fellowship programs we have in particular, and also recruitment for our medical students? We know that underrepresented individuals in medicine, maybe slightly older learners, non-traditional students, are more likely to go into primary care. How are we thinking about that from recruitment and sort of the workforce shortage, even from admission to medical school versus residency, and the number of programs we have as well too?
That's a great question. Our school has a very different admissions process. So, Dr. Lindia Willis-Jacobo is our Dean of Admissions for the school, and she's taken a really different approach to how we're recruiting. So, looking holistically, trying not to look essentially at GPAs and test scores, thinking about the whole person that's coming into their medical career and what they're bringing to the table. I think that goes a long way. And I think that our brand for KP actually carries itself really far. A lot of our students have been Kaiser Permanente members and have grown up, we're born at Kaiser Permanente because we have such a large, you know, such a large platform. So I think looking very holistically at the people that we're going out to find for our medical school, for our residency programs, being in places that we haven't traditionally been, states we haven't traditionally been in, um, service organizations that we, are partnering with, and national meetings and things like that have been really important. And then thinking about primary care, our school is not dedicated to churning out primary care physicians exclusively, but we'd be thrilled if we have fantastic primary care graduates. And I think certainly we start this, the primary care immersive LIC, their clerkship experience very early in the first year. And so they're fostering those skills from such an early stage, as you know, that I'm hopeful that that's what they're starting to see as an amazing doctor are these role models like yourself and others who are out there and teaching.
It's kind of you. I guess I have to give a plug that Dr. Willis Jacobo was a guest on one of our Permanente chats, I think about 6 or 8 months ago or so. So if you haven't checked that out, go look at that one. We talked about diversity, equity, inclusion. It was a fantastic chat. So go back into our archives and please review that one as well. So we have a question here in the chat kind of relating to workforce as well too. It's amazing to see the passion and drive of future physicians and their instructors. We're hearing that burnout is real and a pressing issue, and clinicians are seeking relief by cutting down hours, et cetera. What is changing about the residency and the medical school curriculum, preparing them for these sort of unpredictable and unprecedented scenarios as we enter really a new phase of medicine here, kind of in the I don't want to say post-pandemic, the peri-pandemic phase, right?
Yeah, peri. That's a great question. I look back at medical school, and I think I heard a talk on this by a UCSF professor yesterday, actually. And it was kind of this idea that you either had it or you didn't. And that might mean resilience and that might mean knowledge, but it certainly meant that like you kind of didn't have this idea that you were developing skills, not just your clinical skills, but how you kind of maintain yourself. That was not part of what we talked about in medical school. I'm guessing it probably wasn't part of what you talked about in medical school. And I think schools now, led kind of nationally by a lot of calls for reform from some of our larger organizations, are thinking differently about wellness and well-being. So that's kind of a driving force that I think it's shaped some of the work we do in our residency programs. It's shaping the work that we're doing with our medical students. They're doing a lot of coaching, both in both the UME and in GME, to try to build resilience. And I think that focus that it's a long career and it can be a hard career is a message that it's not sugarcoating. I think people are coming in with more open eyes and more skills to tackle some of the tougher times.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's two things you said there I want to respond to. The first thing is, I always tell my patients and show my patients I'm a human being first and foremost, and second of all, am I a doctor, right? I remember in medical school I felt like I had to be sort of very like Norman Rockwell type doctor, right? White coat, press tie, like very formal. And then I'm kind of a goofy individual, as I'm sure, as you know, and most of our audience knows. And once I realized that I could just be myself and be an individual, I was able to connect with my patients in such a more meaningful way as an individual, as opposed to sort of quote unquote the doctor. And I think teaching medical students, it's okay to be yourself, and teaching residents, so it's okay to be yourself, and put yourself first, so that your cup is full, so you can give to your patients, as opposed to just draining your cup, and then you can no longer provide good care too. So I think that's an important piece. And the second thing I want to respond to, I can't remember what I said.
Well, I'll respond to your first piece, which was, I think I was with you in that I thought you had to be a certain type of person. And I love being an imperfect doctor in front of residents and medical students. And even just kind of seizing those moments where you're hearing the stories, and it takes that little extra time, but like talking about a book with a patient, laughing about something that's happening, sharing that piece. And then, I think so much of what we do is actually bringing people together. And I think it's a huge privilege. And I think you have to seize those times to share that, or you're not kind of getting that whole experience of medicine that I think is so important to keep us going.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It's so valuable to demonstrate that and to teach that as well too. There's another question here in the chat, kind of going back a little bit to some of our previous conversation as well about how do you systematically measure quality back to the learners, both for medical students and residents. I know this is a topic you spend lots of time thinking about and mapping out, and wanted to kind of get some more thoughts about how we're doing that as an organization and throughout the medical school as well.
It's a good question. So it's new. So we know that there are measures like HEDIS measures. So for primary care, for example, it's cancer screening, and adherence to medications and A1C and hypertensive management. And we give that back to our physicians, but we actually collect it for our residents as well. And it may not be perfect at the individual level because obviously, right, our learners are seeing patients and contributing somewhat, but the system's also contributing to how that patient is getting care or a mammogram, or, there are other factors about why their medication adherence might not be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, you can see outliers. So you can see people who you just think, oh, there's something going on here where they can attend to this and they can improve it. And they can also feel really good about taking great care of patients when they see that they're performing, essentially, that their quality metrics look like attending metrics. And by and large, that our residents and we just published a paper that showed that our residents and our attendings are all actually, at least in Southern California, and this data was from a few years ago, they're performing above the national average. So to be able to connect that back, I think is exciting, and I think it can really drive performance improvement. So I'm really interested in how our residency programs are thinking about improving the care that we deliver. So if residents are tackling the things that matter so much to, saving patients' lives and improving patient health and preventative care, like that's a total win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very well put, very well put. Another question in the chat here as well too, regarding kind of our virtual environment. We're providing a lot more virtual care and asynchronous care through email and video visits as well. And as we're learning to provide virtual care, both as physicians and nurses and medical students as well, we're also delivering care that requires slightly different skills, doing it virtually versus in person. And is the medical school adapting its curriculum to change the modes of care, such as virtual care or home care, or other type of environments which are not as traditional as the hospital and the clinic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a telehealth work group, and what I'm really excited about, part of the goal of the medical school was that we would be able to contribute to the school as, Permanente physicians, but also that the school would be able to contribute to us and how we deliver care. And I think this is actually one of the places that the medical school is kind of ahead. So as we made the transition, we were just into the pandemic. We really weren't sure what it meant to be, competent in delivering virtual care. And we were just starting to think about these things. And the school has been doing incredible work, kind of setting forward, targets and skills that you test students on in a simulated environment, and you actually know whether they're able to, proficiently deliver care in a virtual environment. And so we're taking some of the things that we've learned in the school, and we're actually sharing it with GME and with, continuing medical education, and thinking about best practices for all of KP. So I think that's really exciting, and I think it's pretty cutting edge.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Awesome. This is such a great conversation. We could probably go on all day. There are actually a few other questions we might not have time to get to. I want to know for you individually, what makes you most proud to be a Permanente physician?
I love working for KP. I love the mission of Kaiser Permanente. Like it really resonates with me. It's why I'm here. And I also chose to, pursue a career where there were learners. And so the Oakland Medical Center, the medical school, all the work we're doing in Southern California, it's just, it's kind of brings together for me, I didn't know that you could be a doctor and an educator until I was in medical school. And for me, finding that place here has been kind of magic.
That's such a good answer. That actually, okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm sorry. I know I said that, but your answer actually ties beautifully into this next question, actually, about, it talks about, the teamwork happening between, the medical school and KP's physicians as well too, because it's a very unique environment, right? Where you have thousands of physicians who all work for an organization which also has a medical school, as opposed to a more kind of traditional academic setting where there's the medical school and then a bunch of other doctors who are necessarily independent or somewhat affiliated. How do you think being within KP, maybe there's good and bad here, and the teamwork that has to go in between the K and the P, so to speak, as well as the medical school and the medical groups as well? Any thoughts there?
Lots of thoughts. You know, it's a bit of an arranged marriage. It is something that's kind of coming forward. And with many new schools, you sort of see this, that you're sort of building something as you go, right? You're building a plane as you fly it. So I think the most important things for us are to continue to remember, you know, what we're here for and why we're doing this work. That's really, I always like to go back to that value. Like, what is the benefit? What's the benefit of the school to the organization, of the organization to the school? And there will be bumps. I think it's that sort of shared commitment. It's the passion for learning and education. And I think keeping our eye on the big picture, which is this is really good for Kaiser Permanente in my mind, because we're out in different places for having a medical school than we might have been before. And I think we're recognized differently nationally for the work that we're doing in medical education. So I think it's very exciting. I don't think we're through some of the growing pains. I know those will be there. But we have, I think, we're rounding, I think, 900 clinical science faculty now, and
Wow.
they are not just in Southern California, they're in all regions. Um, and when you look at those numbers, I mean, that's a high percentage of physicians who are working just with the medical school. That doesn't include our residency, you know, educators. So it's not a small number of people who are doing this work, and it's a big part of the work that people do who are really passionate about it.
Awesome. All right, and with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time.
It's been great. Thanks, Alex. See you soon.
Awesome. So our next chat, for everyone out there, we actually don't have our next chat scheduled yet, but make sure you sign up for the Permanente Medicine newsletter so you can get notified, or like us, our Facebook, Permanente Medicine Facebook page, so you can get notified when we go live next time. We'll see you all soon. Thanks again.
Thanks.